Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. I hope you and yours are well. Nice to have you back again. Been another week of lots going on in the campaign and in politics in general appertaining to Scotland. And I'm delighted to say we've got two newbies with us today, two new candidates from the Alliance to Liberate Scotland. We've got Anna Carroll there down in Edinburgh, who will be standing the Edinburgh and Lothians regional list. Anna, welcome to Through a Scottish Prism.
Thank you.
And we've got Ken there, who's in the west of Scotland. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you, Roddy. Good morning. And
we've got Phil there in the departure lounge at the JFK, and who could be leaving us at any minute if his flight is called. Welcome. And I'm sorry to say Eva's not with us today. She's unable to join us. She's out campaigning and doing her bit for the country. So you'll just have to make do with the three of us. Are you okay, Phil, with your travel back? You just flew across and you're flying right back?
That's life. What can you do? It's business. Got to be dealt with. But the only thing is, given the current political situation in the world and my current destination and location, I've got to be a wee bit more careful than normal, perhaps.
Yeah. They obviously didn't check your social media posts, that's for sure. Well, let's start. Here's for it's been quite a week now. On this programme, we attempt to give you reasons to. This is why we should be independent. Here's what we can do when we're independent. And if there's one thing, it's the growing corruption within the British Senate. Just every week we're reporting something else that's corrupt, and this week is no different. We heard the news that the MI5 services who vet everyone before they get a job, a high-profile job, Mandelson was vetted by the MI5 and failed. Starmer knew, now denying that he knew, but he still went ahead with the appointment of this guy. Is this a resignation matter, and does it just show you the absolute corruption that goes on in British politics?
Of course it is. And apologies for the announcement over the background here. But yeah, this is typical. We knew this was going to happen because it's happened so many times before. Mandelson has been appointed to a position he was not fit to take. And the reason they get in there is because, like Starmer and like the rest of the leadership in the United States and in the UK and in the EU, they're under control of the elites that currently run what's going on in the world and what is causing absolute chaos across the planet. So we're now in a situation where we have people in the American Senate, leaders, exec, Trump, who are at the behest of what's known as the Epstein class. And that's what we're facing here. Mandelson was, think about it, I mean, he was clear to become US ambassador despite failing a security vetting process. And the Starmer previously insisted that Mandelson had lied about the extent of his links to paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. But the Foreign Office has overruled Mandelson's vetting because Keir had already announced that he was the new Labour spin doctor and his man in Washington, and that's all that mattered. And he said to be absolutely furious that the former Labour grandee, as was reported, was granted developed vetting against the advice of UK security vetting. So the government administrators are furious about this, but it just tells you who actually controls our government, who controls the American government, and why politicians are not our leaders. They're very simply the highest grade of servant to those who really run what's going on the
planet. Ken, it's really, it's so typical of the British. If you fail at something, you're promoted up. Failed politicians in the House of Commons suddenly become lords. People get jobs in government agencies. The UK is corrupt from top to bottom, and this with Mandelson and Starmer is no exception.
No, absolutely. It's surprising to me that you ever appointed him in the first place, because we've always known that Mandelson was a wrong-un. And I think he was sacked twice from government jobs as well, wasn't he? And they knew about his connection to Epstein. Whether they knew the depth of it or not is open to conjecture. So he should never have been appointed in the first place. That was just a crazy appointment. What they've done now is we have this Foreign Office official, this chap's name, Ollie Robbins. They're saying he's the man who overruled the security vetting, which seems an extraordinary thing to have done. What I'd really like to know is, why did he do it? Whose behalf did he do it on? Because it's extraordinary, because apparently, according to the Prime Minister, he didn't know about it, and neither did the Foreign Secretary. It seems extraordinary that anything like that would be kept from them. So it's very murky, but it is absolutely typical, as you say, of how what is a very corrupt system of government works.
Yeah, thanks, right, Ken. Welcome, Eva. We knew you were out campaigning, but nice of you to come in. I'd just say, I'll get back to you in a minute, but folks, I just want you to know, and I'm going to be speaking to you about it later, about her television appearance. She's now become a bit of a diva. When she said she was going to appear in Prism, she wanted a bigger dressing room, and the M&Ms were to be the green ones only. And we had to separate. And Hazel was the one that she said she wanted Hazel, separating them out. See, they get 1 week, 4 minutes on TV, and they're just uncontrollable. I'll be with you in a minute, Eva. Anna, this corruption within the UK, with Mandelson getting appointed when he should never have been appointed, and as Ken's pointed out, everybody knew he'd been done for a mortgage, not a mortgage fraud, but he'd received money illegally for a fraud. He'd fired him a couple of times. It just shows you in the UK that elite are not accountable.
Yeah, they feel they're above the law, that particular bubble they're in. I think Starmer should have resigned ages ago when he supported Netanyahu's starvation policy in Gaza. I mean, he's supposed to be a human rights lawyer, and he obviously didn't know what human rights were. I mean, why is he there as the leader of the Labour Party? He's very obviously completely controlled, as you said, by the Epstein elite. If you can call it elite. The kind of lid is being lifted a little bit, so you can see the mess underneath, the disgusting mess that they're all inured in. And I'm not surprised people don't want to vote. Actually, it's very disheartening for the average person. Yeah.
It's very disheartening. Eva, as I say, welcome. Glad you could make it after all for a wee while. I want to come back in a minute. I'm going to ask you two questions, but the first one we were answering here is Peter Mandelson, after failing MI5 vetting, been given the job anyway. When your security services are telling you, it just seems ridiculous that they just ignore the norms for the rest of us.
It's not anything other than self-interest and compromise and corruption and somebody somewhere with a little black book. And it extends throughout politics worldwide. We've seen evidence of that very much closer to home in the context of the behaviour of some Scottish politicians. Because it's not who you know, it's what you know, and what you know about who you know. And it's just disgusting. And yet another reason why we have to break away from that union, and when we do, create a different sort of politics in Scotland, where we've got transparency, we've got clarity, we've got openness, we've got integrity, because you can see in recent years that that's been missing here too, which is such a great pity. I see, for example, Joanna Cherry's book's about to be launched, and there's been some excerpts from that in the press. And it's very disheartening and disappointing to see in black and white just how very badly she was treated by the First Minister at that time, those around her, the governing party, the way that women were treated. And it all boils down to something very rotten in the politics, even Scotland as well as wider in the UK. And it justifies, to an extent, voter apathy, because people want to be faced with a choice between policies, not a choice between good and bad or corrupt or not corrupt. They want integrity to return, and it's high time that it did.
It did. Well, now that I've got you back, and we'll get double questions, mate. You earn your money this week, Eva. This week we had a party political broadcast on behalf of the Alliance to Liberate Scotland. I mean, again, I know it sounds as if I'm patting myself in the back here because I've been part of the group, but to have done what we've done over the few weeks, you know, we've got 40 candidates standing in the regions, managed to get 14 candidates in constituencies, and you managed to get a party political broadcast. I know it was your first time on the TV. How did you find it, and what's the feedback been to you on it?
Can I just say it wasn't my first time on the television, because I was once on the telly because I was in the audience at an SNP conference back in the 1990s.
I thought you were going to say Crime Watch here. I was panicking.
In the days of the video recorders where you sat all day waiting for yourself to be on the telly, recorded it and then played it back and rewound it, what have you, just to spy yourself there in the audience. But I was also on the telly at the Alba launch. But the difference was at the Alba launch, remember, we had been coming out of lockdown, so you couldn't go to the hairdressers. But this time I managed to go to the hairdressers before. But anyway,
you got to get your priorities right, Eva. You got to get...
Absolutely. The script was a secondary feature. I had to organise the beauty therapist, etc. first, and the facelift. No, testament absolutely to Hazel particularly, because we could only have qualified for that broadcast if we had a minimum of 4 candidates in every region. And that would never have happened if it hadn't have been for Hazel practically, you know, doing ghosters, staying up all night, getting forms done and collected and delivered and handed in and what have you. And yeah, there were a few hairy moments when we thought that some deadlines in some places might be missed. But overall, we managed it with a little bit of room to spare. So that was great stuff. A similar position applied in relation to deadlines for the broadcast, because we found out about the deadlines a wee bit late in the day.
Just a bit.
So we had to scramble it together. But I think overall, judging by the reactions, we did not too badly. The studio were lovely folk, and it was nice to be able to do it. And obviously the point of the exercise was for people to think a bit more closely than perhaps we usually do about the voting system, why it works the way it works, and what we need to do to maximise the independence vote. And that was the purpose of that exercise. So here's hoping people do vote Alliance where we're on the constituency, because that's 14 constituencies we're in, and also on the list in every region, because the words for independence will be on everybody's ballot paper for the region where it says vote Alliance to Liberate Scotland for independence. And we really need those votes. Our country needs those votes, because this isn't about bums on seats. This is about maximising, in essence, the vote for independence, bringing the gang back together, looking at rejuvenated, if you like. And that was the whole point of that exercise.
And very successful it was too. But there's been so many firsts, Eva, as you know. I went, I can remember the conversation. No, I've never done a political. I don't know. I wouldn't know how it's done. So the team have muddled through so many things, and well done. Of course, Ken, you've got a comment. You had a comment to give direct to Eva about the podcast.
Yes, I have. This is particularly for you, Eva. It was a comment I got. The rest of the guys know who it was. I won't say on air who it was. But someone greatly admired your earrings and your brooch. So hopefully we'll get a vote there anyway as well, I think. But yeah, so now you know they admired that. Can I ask you who they were made by?
I'll need to ask my partner Matt, who's a very big fan of eBay, but don't tell anybody.
All right. Well, it was suggested to me that it was Chanel, but I don't know if that's true or not.
It might be supposed to look like that.
I'm just thinking we could be making some merchandise here and raising some money for the party here, even if we can get onto Matt and find out where we got them from. Yeah. Anna, in your area, have you heard anything feedback from the party political broadcast?
Yes, we have. I thought it was it was so professionally done. It was fantastic. Yes, we've already had some volunteers who've offered their help directly as a result of the broadcast. Wow. So I thought I was very impressed. Very well, very impressed, Yvonne.
It's excellent. Yeah, if only they knew. If only they knew. It's the same with this. If only they knew, Eva. But it's great news. If you get one person and one donation and one vote where you weren't going to get, then it was worth it. But I think we're going to do a lot better than that. But moving on, Phil, I know because you've been crossing the Atlantic and crisscrossing the Atlantic, you've not had much chance to catch up. But, you know, the big story this week in Scotland, of course, was the spat that went on with Anas Sarwar and Lord Offord of the Reform Party, saying that there was a deal done, and of course Sarwar was denying it. But just a couple of things. Here's the following day after the broadcast on Channel 4, with Labour telling it, oh, John Swinney's an SNP bad, trying to turn it into that, and Blake saying it wasn't true. Here's what Lord Offord said.
With Max, and just as people were leaving, Anas came on his own, without his minders, popped over just to say goodbye. I remember exactly what he said. He said, instantly moved to Reform. He said, I always saw you as more of a unionist than a Tory, Malcolm. I remember that line. And he said, look, you know, you're going to do well in the election, you're going to win a lot of seats. At some point, we need to get together and talk about how we work together, Reform and Reform and Labour, to get rid of the SNP. Turned on his heel and left, and off he went. And that was it. And I remember just turning him back and saying, wow, I mean, that's incredible. You can, that's politics. We're going to learn this game fast. This is politics, that you can be on national TV and absolutely lambasted, and then bounce over as if nothing's happened and friendly chat and working together. So that's, and so that.
So there you go. That's what he's saying. He doesn't, I mean, we don't know, but there has also been a journalist who's confirmed it happened, and others. Lord Offord there doesn't sound to me as if he's making up a story on the hoof. What do you think?
Of course he isn't. This is well known. This is standard stupid. This is normal. This is exactly what the whole system is designed for. The Daunt system, the system in the Scottish Parliament here, is all about ensuring that not one party has a majority. And it's worked every time until Alex Salmond busted that flush some time ago. It's not going to happen again. And so really what you need to do is work together for your collective goal. Now, as unionists, this is why Offord Sarwar said, you're a unionist, Malcolm, and that's why we want to work with you rather than a Tory. So, and of course they're going to cut a deal. They have to cut a deal. It's all about removing SNP from power. What are the policies of the SNP, of anyone else in Scotland, other than to unify and to get rid of the SNP? SNP back. That's all you're hearing. So this is the problem that we've got, because we now face a situation where the SNP refuse to take cognizance of this fact. This is the system that was put in place way back under Major by Lane, who was the Secretary of State of Scotland, the whole GERS system. This whole system, the HON, is designed to ensure that makes it a position where SNP cannot take control. And Alex Salmond busted that flush, as I said before. But why then? The big question. Why then, John Swinney, are you refusing to play this system and continue with SNP1 and SNP2? Because everybody knows that that doesn't work. And that is what Offord and Sarwar were talking about.
Yeah, we're talking Unionist Party A1, Unionist Party B2, or Unionist Party C2. They are playing the game. But here, on the topic, Ken, of who's telling the truth, Sarwar Reform or not, there's a guy called Paul Sinclair. Now, I can't remember if it was Jack McConnell's spokesman he was, or Donald Dewars. He's diehard Labour. I mean, we're talking as Labour as they come. Here's his opinion on things.
Anas Sarwar, I've worked with Anas Sarwar. I like him. I've also criticised him. Do I think he bounced up to Malcolm Offord and say we should work together? He probably did.
He probably did. What do you think, Ken? Now, you give him the benefit of the doubt to Anas or not?
I would have to say I'm not. There was reports in the papers of a potential tie-up between the two way back last year before this all blew up the other night. One of them isn't telling the truth. There's no sort of room in the way they're talking. There's no sort of room for perhaps a misunderstanding. One of them's lying and one of them isn't. I'd have to say if I had to put my money in MD, I would say it was probably Anas. Because what Phil was saying there is right. people have to work together in the Parliament for good or bad. And undoubtedly, if the unionist parties could put together a kind of coalition that got rid of the SNP, they would do it. So I'm quite sure that Sarwar would work with Offord, and I think that's what they would try and do if they could. So they've been caught out. Maybe that's Anis knows the game. Maybe Malcolm doesn't know it so well, or else he would not have actually blurted this out in a television broadcast. But I would be pretty certain, as Paul Sinclair was saying there, that it was in fact Anis who broached this with him, and it's him that's not being entirely truthful.
Correct. I would suggest any unionist leader who's not trying to do deals with other unionists is not doing his job properly. Just as I would suggest that John Swinney's not doing his job properly when he's not talking to other pro-independence parties.
Well, if I could come back in that just for a second, Roddy. I mean, this is the biggest problem we have in the Parliament from an independence point of view, is that John Swinney and the SNP, just basically as a whole, are just not prepared to work with anybody else and use the system in our favour. And it's a huge frustration to everyone. And it's something Swinney just shouldn't be doing, but it's definitely just putting party, before country. And it's a really bad way of operating, and you can't work that way if you want to get a majority for any particular view, whatever it is. But in our case, obviously, to get together a whole pro-majority in the Parliament that work together to get us free from this union.
Yeah, well, let's remember the Unionists put the devolution package together and the Scotland Act. And when they sat down to do it, they kept, we're not letting them get broadcasting because that could be bad for the union. So they kept broadcasting. They put in a voting system that said, well, at that time there was one of the SNP say, well, we'll make sure we'll put in a voting system that needs two parties, and it'll always be the Labour Party and the Liberal Party. And we'll freeze out the SNP, we'll freeze out the Tories, and we will run it as a fiefdom as we have been for the last 50 years. That's what it was about. And exactly, it takes two parties. And we are. But to go back on Anna, here's, as Ken alluded to, in the papers a while back there, this was in the Telegraph that Labour were willing to work with Reform. So this just didn't happen in one time. So do you think, who's telling the truth, Offord or Sarwar?
Offord. I don't like Offord particularly, but Sarwar is such a vacuous individual. I wouldn't take anything he said seriously. And I could see that he would join up with any party which would put Labour in a position of power sharing. Yeah. But I mean, they did this during the referendum, didn't they? I mean, it was a join up of Labour and Tory. They were very helpful to each other. So this kind of is a little bit of what you were saying before about the corruption within power. I think, it's this is why, as a fresh party, we have we're kind of like a new breath of air. Yeah,
what you see, what it says in the tin, you get inside. That's what we see.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that I would like to try it and in any way try it and move your opinion. Eva, can I just put before I ask you the same question? This came up yesterday about Sarwar. He was congratulating the MP for Blantyre for saving the Hamilton Accies and bringing them back to Hamilton. And immediately the directors from Hamilton Academicals put out a statement saying what a load of balderdash. It was nothing to do with them. It was the fans, the board and the local. It was not the Labour Party. He lied about that. So would he lie about what Lord Offord said?
Yeah.
Well, remember when he said, watch my lips, there'll be no austerity under Labour.
Oh, yes.
We need to go any further than that. This, again, is one of the reasons for voter apathy, because people are just sick to the back teeth with glaikit politicians representing us, making a fool of themselves. And again, it's the unionist cabal doing wee deals, not even behind closed doors. Obviously, Offord's quite open about it, and that's entirely up to him. But the issue that we've got in our movement is clearly the unionists do deals. That's what politics is about. So why are all the independent supporters not doing deals? Our hand of friendship was out long, long ago. Alex Salmond's hand of friendship was out in 2021. The people that have knocked it back are the SNP. And we've got this constant mantra of both votes SNP, and then we'll get a majority, and then we'll get a referendum. How come? Because Westminster cannot possibly deny it. Oh, yes, they can. It's like that pastime, you know, oh, he's behind you. And it's just sickening that you see this behaviour day in and day out, and it's frustrating because what people really want in Scotland is effective politicians. They want honesty, they want action, they want all the different difficulties that our country's got to be addressed so that we can realise the potential of everybody living in this country. And that isn't going to happen when we're governed by fools who are duplicitous, who are less than honest, and who are looking out for themselves and looking out for, you know, power plays and who they can sook in with to their personal or party advantage, as opposed to putting the country first. Because under no circumstances would any kind of coalition between Malcolm Offord and Anna Sarwar deliver anything other than disastrous outcomes for Scotland. And I think that's the lesson to take from this, that the unionists are quite happy to gang together, gang up, get on with the job and line their own pockets, as opposed to looking at what they can actually deliver in terms of real, positive, measurable progress for the people of this country.
Yeah, they only have one policy, which is just SNP bad. That's what they do all the time. Independence bad. They don't have anything else. But, you know, talking on, you know, what's going down here is that if I just find my notes here we go. This famous Scotland in Union, this arch-typical, you know, hardcore unionists, they're out on social media and everywhere telling people how to vote. So you vote for the Tory here, vote for the Reform here, vote for the Labour here, the Liberal here. That's what they're about. They're doing it, and still our main independence party, Ken, head in the sand, refuses to talk to anyone when everybody and everything is pointing to you need coalition, you need alliance. You need alliance to liberate Scotland. Literally, that's what we need. Yes,
absolutely. It's a totally dishonest position, this vote 1, vote 2 for the SNP. And they know it. As I said earlier, it's really all about party. And I've actually got, this is an election leaflet I got through the door just yesterday. And the way they put it, if I can just find it here, it says, people in Scotland have a choice. By voting SNP in your constituency, you can elect an SNP government with John Swinney as First Minister. By voting for the SNP on the regional list in the Peach ballot paper, you can secure an SNP majority that will deliver a referendum on independence. It's utterly dishonest.
Yep.
Because A, they know the chances of getting a majority are small. B, they know that if they had an alliance with other indie parties, we could get a far bigger majority of independent supporting MSPs in the Parliament. They know it will be refused. It's just, the whole thing just seems completely dishonest to me. And then they won't work with other people. It's purely party before the country. They won't deliver a referendum on independence. They know that will be denied. They know full well it will be denied.
100%.
They will just continue to go down this line. And it's inexplicable, really. If you actually believe in independence, then why on earth would you do that? And they're really just not working for independence at all. And they haven't campaigned for independence since 2014. They've done absolutely nothing to progress the whole case for independence. They just haven't done it.
No, they haven't. I mean, every opinion poll for the last 3 years has shown the yes in front. If they'd been campaigning, we would be at 60-70%. I honestly do believe that.
Well, this is the point. I mean, on a natural level, we're getting at the moment consistently around 50% support for independence, while the SNP's own support is down, what, about 35% or something at the moment. So there's desire is there. And if you're actually campaigning, and as they should be doing, you're absolutely right. We should be looking at picking that figure up to 60% and beyond.
Yep. Here's the thing, all the science, everything, including Sir John Curtis. Now, I used this last week, and I've been using it all week, and I make no apologies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be using this between now and polling day. All the figures of every opinion poll that's come out, Anna, it keeps telling everybody there will be no regional seats because the SNP got such a huge, I mean, we know in 2021, like 1.2 million votes, whatever it was, got them 2 seats. Their lead is even bigger in the constituency this time. They're going to win more constituency seats, so their chances are nil to get them. The thing to do is to be in some kind of alliance, but they're not going to do it.
I think this is filtering through to the electorate, though, that they have been constantly, this idea of SNP 1 and 2 is a waste of time. And the promises of independence as well have been kicking the whole can down the road year after year after year, and it's still not happening. I think that'll be why they're down in their popularity charts. But it's our message, and also Alba's message also about the list vote, I think is filtering through, because you keep plugging away and people really, it's quite simple really. It's kind of disingenuous of the SNP to keep on insisting that you should vote SNP 1 and 2, and it's blatantly not going to work.
Absolutely.
No, absolutely. Never. I mean, it goes back to, I remember 2016 when Palomine and I were talking. He was saying we need a Barrhead Independence Party because we can never win seats in the list, and that's why we were still in the SNP. We could see it then. Others still don't see it. That's the problem. But Eva, Ken alluded to it this week in the press. The old SNP were telling us when they win the election, they're going to demand powers to have the legislation for a referendum devolved to the Parliament. There is more chance of me getting a season ticket at Parkhead and becoming the next Pope, isn't there?
Absolutely. And, we can list all the errors and the dead ends that the SNP have led us up in the last, 12 years or so since the referendum. But one of the worst things that they did was, and I've possibly got the date wrong, but I think it was around about the anniversary of the referendum, so 18 September 2024, when Ash Regan, who by that time I think had left the SNP, and she had a motion at Holyrood to make the next Holyrood election, in essence, a de facto referendum or a plebiscite, if you want to call it that. And the only person that voted for the motion was herself. Every other member of the Parliament voted against it, including every single MSP from the SNP who was there. And that speaks for itself. They could have had that vote then. And there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that John Swinney can do after this election, whether he's got a majority or not, that the SNP couldn't have done since 2014, because they had a majority for independence in the Scottish Parliament that entire time. And do they think that we've forgotten that? Do they think we've forgotten the days that they took the Greens into government with them and, in essence, promoted Green policies over the question of independence? Because they didn't move the dial at all in terms of practical arrangements. And instead, what they've done is reduced the popularity of the SNP so that instead of them having 50-odd% support, they've got 30-odd% support, because at least 20% of the independent supporting electorate have vowed never to vote SNP again while this current leadership remains in power. So it's disingenuous in the extreme. And what's really concerning for me is John Swinney is actually telling people literally to their faces that if there's an SNP majority, there will be a referendum. That's just absolutely and completely untrue. It is not in his gift. It is currently in the gift of Westminster and will remain so, because Westminster are not afraid from John Swinney. He's either doing their bidding deliberately, or he's too weak or too stupid to think about doing it any other way. But can you just picture Keir Starmer, if he's sitting watching his telly and John Swinney comes on and explains, when I get a majority, this is what I'm going to do, Westminster can't possibly refuse. It'll be like, you know, those scenes off of the Muppet Show with the two old guys that sit up in the balcony and kill themselves laughing. That's what will be happening in number 10 every time John Swinney comes on and says there'll be a referendum. Or Angus Robertson says there'll be a referendum, or Stephen Gethin says there'll be a referendum. Honestly, the place will be, they'll all be rolling about on the floor, just absolutely taking the pure mickey out of them, because they don't respect the Scottish Parliament, and they certainly don't respect the SNP. Who does?
Yeah. And they don't respect the Scottish people, and they don't respect Scottish democracy. Let me say this, although I'm not in charge of policy for the Alliance to Liberate Scotland, but if Alliance to Liberate Scotland become a majority party, they will never ask for anything. They will tell. They will tell them down there what's happening. No asking. And that's what we need. Because the union has never been weaker, Ken. And that's the best time to strike, is when the union's weak.
Well, I mean, we've had so many opportunities over the last 12 years or so. Brexit was an obvious one, and then that big win with 56 SNP MSPs, and they did nothing. We've had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, and there's things being done to our country just now, like closing Grangemouth, Westmoreland, all kinds of things going on. The government should be shouting from the rooftops about that, because that's all happening because of Westminster rule. And they can change all that. And they're just missing opportunity after opportunity. And they undoubtedly, as Eva was saying, they are laughing at them down there. So they told Nicola Sturgeon where to go. Twice what Theresa May did and Boris Johnson did. I don't know if you saw Boris Johnson's reply. That always amazed me, because the government sent a 30-page note about why we should get a referendum. And Boris Johnson sent back a 1-page, 6-paragraph letter full of nothing but actual provable lies and things that had absolutely nothing to do with the question. And what did Nicholas, when I saw that, I thought, well, something was going to happen now. Nothing. Just turned around and went away. And exactly the same thing will happen when John Swinney is told where to go. And it's been made clear by Starmer, it's been made clear by the Chancellor, and Streeting last week was particularly vehement about it. That's what's going to happen. So it has to be done differently. We have to demand that we have independence, and we have to do that through a plebiscite election. But it's not going to happen while that lot are in charge. It's just not going to happen.
No, I agree with you. That's the thing, Anna. As I say, the union's never been weaker. There's never been a bigger, there's a huge support in Scotland for independence. But there's this inability for us, it goes through our history. But everything is changing in the world. I mean, the whole world dynamic is changing. There's definitely, there's people out there, I mean, we've seen it with, there only been 20 and 30% of people turning out for by-elections. There is a change coming. Is it going to come in time for May the 7th?
Well, I hope so, yeah. I think we will get we should get some breakthrough. I hope so, because we need it. And the SNP, the current Scottish government is acting like a sort of block against independence, actually. But I mean, how many countries that have become independent have become independent by asking? Can you think of any? I mean, I suppose it's not. I mean, even the fact that you have to ask is a humiliating thing. It's like not thinking. Not. I mean, Scotland is a country. We're supposed to be in an equal union. Why should we have to ask? So,
Indeed.
Yeah. I mean, that's, as you say, that's what we should be doing. We should be demanding, or just stating. Yeah. And
they go on all the time about, oh, you're too weak, you're too poor. That's one of their favourite. There's never enough money for anything, even. And this week, one of my favourites. I mean, I love a good picture of a good socialist. You know, a good socialist like Lord Robertson. There, what a socialist that man is. But he came out this week and he was suggesting that we were spending too much money on welfare, but we should be, you know, cutting the welfare bill to pay for more armaments to go to more wars. This is in the same week, Eva, as the British government went down the back of the sofa and found another 752 million to give to Ukraine, which now equates to about 29 billion they've had since the Labour Party came into power. They can find money to fund other countries' wars and fight wars against why, we don't know. But when it comes to, you know, funding our NHS or our schools or our hospitals or saving Grangemouth, saving the jobs in Mossmorton, there's never any money for that.
Well, an honest slogan for Labour at this year's election would be bombs, not bairns, because those are their priorities. And this comes in the same week as John Swinney launches the SNP manifesto, which includes a pledge to introduce price controls on some essential food items. And I found that offensive in the extreme, because Scotland is a wealthy country. Our resources ought not to be used to be bankrolling Westminster's wars, but equally well, our people should not, under any circumstances, have to be queuing at food banks or going to shops where there have been price controls imposed because we have a government, a devolved government, who are far too weak and disinterested, quite frankly, and lack the motivation to deliver the independence that would be like winning. Remember that game show Bullseye at the end when you won some rubbishy thing or you know, dusty bin or whatever it was? The host would say, but look what you could have had. Well, that's where Scotland is, because look across the water to Norway, an oil fund of $2 trillion, worth the best part of $300,000 for every member of the population. What have we got in Scotland instead? We've got a First Minister who's saying he's going to do something about keeping the price of a loaf of bread or a pint of milk or a bag of carrots or onions or, you know, half a pound of mince or something within the reach of the ordinary people. I mean, that should not be happening, because we should be in a set of circumstances where everybody in Scotland can go up the street to get their messages and know that they can buy them. Instead, they're seeing headlines in papers showing us what's happening in Ukraine or in Gaza or in Iran, knowing perfectly well that Scotland is being used as an air base for some of these American planes that are going over there, and that our money that should be feeding and heating and clothing our people is being spent to blast folk in other parts of the world who've done us no harm personally, but blasting them to smithereens, to kingdom come, because we're governed by an out-of-touch warmongering elite.
That is absolutely the problem, Ken, isn't it? I mean, as I say, we can find £752 million to go to Ukraine, but the Labour solution by Lord Robertson is cut the welfare bill, the lowest pensions in the developed world, the worst unemployment money, sick benefit, cut it more, cut it, but we can find money for guns.
Yeah, absolutely. It's extraordinary that a Labour peer, I suppose, would make such a suggestion that you'd cut welfare in order to fund defence. It also shows a real split between UK thinking and independent Scotland thinking, because independent Scotland wouldn't be involved in any of these wars that are going on. Defend yourself, you have to be able to do that. But we're not like the UK mindset, which still has this imperial power sort of mentality. So they need their aircraft carriers and all this sort of thing, and their nuclear weapons. Well, their army, you know, all the regular forces are complaining, you know, that they're ill-equipped and they haven't got enough men and all the rest of it. But the idea that your first thought is to fund extra defence spending, let's cut the welfare bill is just extraordinary. And on a point, Eva's talking about food banks there. One of the things I found since I became a candidate, and I've got this, we've got the sort of party email, is I'm getting inundated by people who, you know, want to lobby me. One of them was the Trussell Trust, and they're certainly well organised. I get loads from people who are involved with the Trussell Trust. But back in 2014, I remember sitting on a platform in Kirkintilloch with a huge crowd for a yes-no debate. It was about 300 people. And one of the things that came up was food banks. And I actually had the figures there from the Trussell Trust. And I was looking at the figures that they sent me, or the link they gave me to a report. And the figures now on emergency food parcels are almost twice as much as they were back in 2014. And we were talking about what a disgrace it was then. And we're actually far worse off now. So the last thing we need from anybody, never mind Labour, is saying we should be spending money on defence and take it from the welfare budget. As you say, they seem to be able to find money when they want to find it.
Yep. The thing, if I'm not mistaken, the Trussell Trust, see, there's money. There's money in all these things. There's industries around drugs. There's industry around hunger. Yeah. There's industries around all of these things that are happening. Yeah. And I believe as an area manager, or something for Trussell, they're getting 40 grand a year. Yeah. That buys a lot of tins of beans.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been turned into a business, and it's the same in the drugs. And I'm sure Eva could tell us more about that. But there are businesses that develop around these terrible things. But to get back to the point, Anna, you know, we've got a Labour peer suggesting we cut welfare, while the Labour Chancellor and the warmongers are feeding weapons to a war in Eastern Europe that doesn't involve. I mean, in the last 1,000 years, Scotland, we've been invaded by one country and one country only. It wasn't China, it wasn't Russia, it wasn't Iran, it wasn't North Korea. Only one country has ever invaded us. These are not our enemies, folks. But we're still funding them instead of welfare, really?
Yeah, no. We shouldn't be in Ukraine at all. I mean, that whole carnage could have been avoided by diplomacy. But there are a lot of monies involved, as you mentioned, and I think it's all disappearing down a black hole of corruption. I mean, Ukrainian people, how long has that war been going on?
Since February 2022.
Well, it's way too long. I mean, and as far as Robertson's concerned, I mean, he's a classic example of power corrupting, because when he was very young, he was a kind of peacenik, I believe. Very young, teenager. But as soon as he became part of of Blair's government, became Minister of Defence and so on, he's become more and more gung-ho. And he's constantly pushing this particular agenda. But he himself is involved with various armament companies. I don't think he's director of any, but he's certainly getting associated with them. And if he were to give up just a few of these, you could probably fund several hundred families who are currently on welfare. You know, it'd be a just solution rather than cutting the welfare. We have one of the lowest welfare payouts in Europe. So I think it's £98 a week.
Yeah.
It's nothing. You should try living on that.
Yeah, I should. Our pensions are certainly the lowest. I mean, I'm an anti-war, have been all my life, and since February 22, I've been saying let's have a ceasefire and let's have But the problem is someone puts it. There's no profits in peace. There's only profits in war, and that's the problem. That is the problem. Eva, before I move on to our next question, then you'd like to add on the industry behind things like drugs and food banks? I know equalities is your thing.
It's absolutely heartbreaking and shameful when you look at the amount of money that is spent in what is now the drugs industry or the poverty industry. I actually don't know where to begin, because there are people that look at, for example, drugs difficulties as being a personal medical health issue, and others that say it's a public health issue. But whichever it is, we're not solving any problems with the present approach. And I see that there's a consultation in Edinburgh underway now in respect of having a safe drug consumption room in Edinburgh, when the figures for the safe drug consumption room in Glasgow are really seriously depressing when you look at the amount of money that's been spent, the number of people that have used the facility and have not been able to be rehabilitated. Because if you rehabilitate people, there's no money there, is there? Because they've got better, they're putting themselves back to work, they're involved in society, they're looking after themselves and their family. So that's an enormous debate, but it's an example of where the Scottish Government, unfortunately, has gone wrong in not listening to the people that know what they're talking about, and often by funding charitable enterprises who know the line that the Scottish Government adopt and tend to agree with it because they're worried about their funding. But that opens up a whole other stuff about government funding of quangos and the like, and it's never ending. And it's just another reason why the SNP's stranglehold on public life in Scotland has got to be eroded for the sake of the people for whom the services are supposed to be delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing that came out, a sort of important thing, it's been under the radar, you know, with all the things that are going on. But one thing, Ken, politicians never, ever admit they've got something wrong or they made a mistake, or you were right. So, but however, they're going to bring out some new legislation, which is in effect going to take the UK back into the single market and customs union. Now, never mind what side of the argument anyone on this is. They're going to legislate and they're going to gaslight the people and pretend that this is something completely different, rather than admit they got it. So Brexit has destroyed the economy, and it's going to cause, again, it's going to weaken the union because it's down south in England where the anti-European feeling is. Again, this weakening is an opportunity for us.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? You're right. They can't admit that Brexit was a disaster, and we know it has been. I think certainly from the government's point of view, a Labour point of view, they're looking at the electorate down south. They want to get closer to Europe, but they don't want, you know, the Brexit voters down there to know that's what they're actually doing. The most sensible thing the country possibly could do is join the single market. That's certainly what I'd be advocating for, an independent Scotland, not EU membership, but single market membership. But yeah, it's again, you're right. It's going to cause ructions down south if people really kind of catch on to what Labour are trying to do. But yes, you're right. I mean, it does weaken the union again. The union is weak, as you were talking about earlier on. We're seeing the rise of Welsh independence, which is getting to greater heights. Looking across at Northern Ireland, we must be getting closer to the day when we're going to see a referendum there for reunification. It seems to be in Scotland where the feeling is greatest amongst the people that we're actually finding our politicians are doing the least to exploit this, because of the attitude really of the SNP are taking.
Well, that's, I'm afraid that, you know, but we're bought and sold for English gold, and it continues. But this this single market, you know, the new legislation, which is gaslighting, Anna, it just actually highlights. I saw this on social media, and I wanted to find a way to get in, but I think it sums up Sarwar and Starmer completely. They're a couple of chancers, they really are. And this again is gaslighting the people of the UK, never mind Scotland. I agree with Ken. I think we should never have left the single market and customs union. I'm not for the EU, but I think from a commercial point of view, we need to be in the single market and the customs union. This is going to cause division in England. That, as I say, is an opportunity for us, Anna.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, I think it's the right's not going to accept it. And there's going to be more division within England about this, because it's getting a wider division, I think, between the pro and the anti, and the liberal and the left and the right down there. And we should seize that opportunity for, as you say, it's an ample time. It's a good time, ample time for independence here.
Eva, the single market legislation going back in, do you think it will weaken the union even more?
I sincerely hope so. I think the union is at its weakest. It's when we should be striking. It's when we should have, the public out on the streets. We should have demonstrations. We should have the First Minister leading those demonstrations. We should have teams of people out arguing and harrying for independence at every turn. Because Scotland is obviously a European nation, but it's important to stress that Scotland has traded directly with Europe for centuries. The European universities were often populated by Scottish students hundreds of years ago. I mean, there's fables to the extent that William Wallace studied in Europe. I don't know if he did or not, but people say he did. But our universities are ancient and had ancient ties with mainland Europe. We're a friendly, welcoming nation. We need trade with Europe. We should always have had the ability to sail directly from Scotland to Europe and back again. So it's good that people like Douglas Chapman and Neil Hanvey were doing their utmost to reinstate that ferry link from the east coast of Scotland to Europe. And it's important. It isn't just for us going there on holiday. It's to bring the Europeans directly into Scotland without having to be channeled through England first. And that ferry route should be a priority for the Scottish Government. I don't understand why it hasn't been kick-started long ago, because that kind of thing, that trade with Europe, that friendliness, that camaraderie with mainland Europe is exactly what Scotland needs. It really would be an injection of great self-confidence if the people of Scotland could see just how much they're loved and respected by the Europeans. I mean, you joke about it, but when you go abroad on holiday, you're offended if people think that you're English or British. But when you tell them that you're Scottish, they're delighted. You don't need to be wearing a kilt to do that. But don't get me started on the outfit for the games, because that was another farce. So sorry, I digress. But anyway, hopefully the union will finish later this year. I would like to see that supermajority in Holyrood, and it's only going to happen if the message gets through to independence supporters. Vote for one independence party on the constituency where you've got that opportunity. Clearly vote Alliance in the 14 constituencies where we're standing, and otherwise please vote for us on the list on the basis that every single one of us that you elect will take the view that we have one job, and that is to secure the independence of our country so that we do realise our potential. And Scots make the decisions. The people of Scotland will decide whether Scotland's in the single market or EFTA or BRICS or whatever it is, not be controlled by remote control from the puppets at Westminster.
Yeah, independence, nothing else. Independence, nothing less, folks. But here's the thing. To go full circle almost, Ken, we've said if you vote SNP 1-2, and this is not an attack on the SNP, it's just a fact of the DeHont system. If your second vote will likely elect reform supporters. That's who are the top notch. The votes between the unions go round. They don't grow. They just go round, whichever one. Reform's the flavour of the month. Exactly. And people should hear and read into what Mr. Garage here is saying.
And frankly, what has been so depressing about Scotland's independence from the United Kingdom in the sense of devolution is, has everything since 97 made Scotland happier, made Scotland richer, made it more successful? And yet what you see from Sarwar, from all of them, Swinney, is the same tired old formula. What they are offering the Scottish electorate is more of the same in the next few years.
Read into that. I tell you what I read into that, Ken. I read into that. You'll have had your parliament, we're taking it back, and we're going to have direct rule. That's exactly what he's saying.
Well, it is, and he's said it more plainly before than he said there. Now, even their current manifesto, they're talking about taking away powers. But that's the ultimate aim, is to centralise power back in London and shut down the devolved assemblies. There's absolutely no doubt about that. That's what they intend to do. So things will then only get worse. But that's undoubtedly the aim of the Reform Party, to do that. But as you're talking about the 1-2 vote earlier on, you're right. It's Reform that's going to win out on that. They're the ones that are going to pick up the seats. It's not just unionists as a whole. Reform will do well out of that. And the last thing we need in this country is reform MSPs. They're just clueless. You just don't want them here at all.
The only
the
reform we want is independence.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and that means that people need to vote for us on the list to bring that closer.
Absolutely. Anna, I mean, down in Wales, we know that they're being a bit more discreet and hiding a wee bit here in Scotland. Down in Wales, they've been quite blatant about it. They're going to stop the teaching of Welsh language in Welsh schools. They're going to take Welsh language off all the road signs, which seems to upset the Anglo-Saxon when they see Gaelic or Welsh or Erse on any road signs. It seems to upset them. But they are an English nationalist party. People need to understand that. They will close Holyrood and take everything back to London if they win.
Yeah, they're populist. They don't mean anything they say. Well, they talk in with forked tongues. I don't know how anyone could trust Farage, given his background and what he's done in the past. But he does seem to be appealing to some people. It's this kind of easy slogan that they come up with. Yes, they would be disastrous for. Well, no, not necessarily disastrous for us, because if England is more likely to vote for reform than we are, which will make it easier. Yeah, I mean, in that respect, it'll be a lot easier for us to push for independence because the difference will be so stark.
If you actually look at Farage and the Reform Party and the Restore Party as well, Farage is a pound shop Trump.
Yeah.
And if you see what's happening in America and what's going on, that's what you're going to get, folks. Maybe a bit, not quite. I don't see Farage dressing up as Christ and pretending he's Christ, but it won't be far off it.
Well, he's trying to remove himself a wee bit from his connection with Trump, isn't he? Because Trump's obviously lost the plot completely. But
just a bit.
I think, yes, it will. It's an opportunity for us, I think, an opportunity for Scotland to break free, because, particularly if Holyrood is threatened, because I think that will make people wake up.
I certainly hope so. But the fact is, I put this up every week as well, Eva, and I'll put it up again because Reform want to close our Parliament for sure, but they're all the same. Every one of them. The other three would love to close it. They just don't have the courage to do it. They won't front it up. But they will all be backing. They would, if they come into power in Holyrood, they would back it. They would back their own demise, wouldn't they, for the Union, for Mother England?
Well, they didn't expect Alex Salmond to get, that majority in 2011 for a kick-off. And really, ever since then, it's been on the agenda for all the unionists to defenestrate Holyrood if they possibly can. And what we know at the moment is that since Starmer was elected and Labour were in control again in Westminster, they've been sending money to Scotland directly from Westminster for all their pet projects designed to undermine Holyrood. So that will continue. And sometimes the SNP create a target for their own backs because their government is less than competent in recent years in comparison to the competency that you saw in the Salmond years. It was the best thing to happen in modern Scottish politics. But what really is so disheartening is that the people of Scotland, and this probably applies throughout the UK, but I care more about Scotland than the rest of the UK, obviously, we all do. People are despondent. We've got voter apathy with just cause, because you turn on the telly and you see the performances in Holyrood and you cringe, or you're shouting at the telly and you have to turn it off for safety's sake, because the performances are absolutely desperate. There's been innumerable occasions where MSPs, I think from all parties, but the SNP are the worst at this, is they read out a pre-prepared answer to the wrong question, and they don't even know that that's what they're doing. That's the level of ineptitude that you're dealing with. Very few of them can debate, very few of them can speak from memory or with knowledge and understanding. Most of them are, in essence, reading out what a civil servant has written for them. That's the kind of stuff that people are really teased off with, that folk with little knowledge, little experience, little by way of skills are getting paid, in essence, a king's ransom, far more than most of them would see if they were working outside in the real world. But they're there telling the rest of us how it's going to be and making a complete backside of it an awful lot of the time. So we need to reintroduce not just competent government, but to give people tangible hope that tomorrow will be better than today. And it's not hard to do that when you're an independent country with the level of resources and the income, the revenue, and the potential that Scotland has got. So if you imagine the people of Scotland trying to envision what would an independent Scotland look like, well, what it wouldn't look like is where we are just now, where the level of poverty and want, whether it's food banks, baby banks, school clothing banks, we wouldn't have weapons of mass destruction on the Clyde. The money that should have been made at Grangemouth would be coming back into Scotland. You would have a refinery. The wind and wave power money would be benefiting the people of Scotland. It wouldn't just be benefiting either Westminster or foreign countries. And the people would be happier, confident. They would do, again, what we did in the Salmond years, which was walk tall in the world, not feeling inferior to anybody, just feeling that you were on a level playing field and we were equal with the rest of the world and looking after ourselves the way that we want to be looked after.
Yeah. Well, folks, as always, the clock's always beats us. It's not different today because there's a few things I want to bring up just now. The campaign's very much underway. And our candidates are out knocking doors, doing everything they've got to be doing. And here's some events that are coming up. And if you've got a wee bit of pencil and paper ready, or you want to take a screenshot or whatever, do it. Here's in Glasgow. Here's some of the events that will be happening there in Glasgow over the coming time now, between now and polling day there. The 23rd, you've got the Grace Bar at 7 o'clock, public meeting. Pollock Shields Community Centre on the 24th at 7 o'clock. And then the 25th, there's the All Under One Banner march. There's the 27th of April, there's the Brigdale Complex in Castlemilk at 7 o'clock. 28th, the Gangad Bar, Royston Square, and the Partick Borough Halls. The Alliance to Liberate Scotland are taking it to the people. They're not doing it in TV studios. We don't tend to get invited into the TV studios. Some other dates, the Glasgow Southside Muslim Societies of Scotland, and that's happening on the 17th of April. And again, the Alliance to Liberate Scotland will be represented there. So for anyone who's want to attend any of these, go along, support your local Alliance to Liberate candidate. They do it. And of course, I mustn't forget Eva. Eva the Diva, as I said to you earlier, with our red M&Ms in our bigger dressing room. We've got the Dunblane one, of course, Eva, which I believe you're going to be a speaker at on Tuesday the 28th at 7:30 in the Dunblane Cathedral Halls. Go up and support Eva, folks, and say hello and tell her you support her all the way and the party. Okay, folks, that's just one thing, last thing. So on you go, Eva.
There's another one on Tuesday, the 21st of April, which is organised by Yes Pentlands in the Tanner's Bar. And the people that will be there will include several Alliance to Liberate Scotland candidates. I know Greg MacArthur's going, Joe Smith from Edinburgh is going, Terry Howson from South will be there. So it would be great to see as many supporters as possible there, please. And can I just say very, very quickly about the calibre of candidates that we've got in the Alliance to Liberate Scotland?
Please do.
Our party was only registered in February, and between February and end of March, we were able to marshal those 14 constituency candidates, 40 on the regional lists, and every single candidate has got knowledge, experience, ability, skills. They can speak up for themselves, and most of all, they are determined to see independence delivered. And that's why the Alliance to Liberate Scotland is a very worthwhile choice for people's votes. It is to deliver independence, but it's to make sure that those people who are elected for the Alliance, who go into Holyrood, go there determined to see us progress towards independence because it's an urgent necessity and we are determined to see it happen. We will not be lying down to diktats from Westminster. We will be there to take our country back.
Well said. And just before I leave you, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to remind you, I keep this little gem and I like to play it from time to time. And it's Sarwar of Pinocchio fame.
Read my lips. No austerity under Labour.
Sorry to give the plug to the SNP, but they deserved it for that one. Watch my lips. No austerity under. Just think about it, folks. He lied. They keep lying. Till we see you again, may you and yours, please, please, take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.